So the main things really is your event purpose. The purpose of your event is going to drive a lot of decisions, and it's going to change many factors and many details about how you want to produce your event. So the main things really is, for most events, it's an event to keep your community connected, the community you're serving, your donor community, different parts of your community, kind of bringing that together and staying connected during this time of social distancing. Raising funds is a huge thing. Obviously, annual galas, fundraisers, auctions, and you'll have sponsors during these events and stuff. So events can be a huge way to raise funds for your organization. And of course, driving all kinds of different action. Driving action is important, whether you're trying to get volunteers or more large donors or whatever it is. Many times, a lot of action is driven out of events, whether they're virtual or not. Some things to keep in mind for the purpose is some things just don't translate well. There are some things you may had part of your real physical event in the past, and if you're struggling to figure out how to transform that to a virtual space, some things just won't translate well. So you need to keep that in mind, the virtual space's limitations. However, another thing to keep in mind is the virtual space does some things a lot better, right? It does a lot better at certain things. For instance, bringing people together from all over the world, instead of having to travel and come from other countries to the US. If you do have more of a global community and appeal, if your event's virtual now, that opens it up. So taking advantage of the virtual space, taking advantage of the platforms is important. And considering your audience very carefully, that's an important thing. Who your community and audience is going to change a lot about how you produce your virtual event and what you might do. An example here, we're going to talk about this more later too. This is Mindbody Solutions, and this is a little screenshot of part of their first virtual event they ever did. And we consider their audience very carefully. This was a short 1-hour event, and they are a very non-technical sort of organization. Their audience is very non-technical. They're used to meeting in person, not dealing with technology. So we pretty much only required them to use the organization to use Zoom because that was what they're already familiar with, and it was very easy for them to use it. And their participants were spread all over the state, so it was easy to do that. And then the primary audience, they viewed this event on YouTube. It was a YouTube live stream, and so that also they were trying to build their audience on YouTube anyways. So all these considerations came in with the event purpose and the planning. And this event went really well. And we're going to go into it more later as well. So some more specific things to keep in mind with your audience is you want to balance the features that you want to have in your virtual event with your audience and what they're going to be able to do. Are they technically proficient? If you require them to download something to access the event, will they be able to do that? Well, do they have to register somewhere or set up an account? Are they going to be able to do that? So consider the access to the event and the technical level of your audience. Think about the actions and the interactivity that you want to have too. Do you really want them to be answering polls or taking quizzes or participating in some way or asking questions? So keep that in mind in your audience. How do you want them to engage and interact? And also keep in mind supporting your audience well during the event when it's happening. So people only have a certain amount of really screen stamina. So for instance, these training sessions that I do now as webinars, these used to be 4 hours, but 4 hours over Zoom is a really long time. So we have cut these down to about 40, 50 minutes. So the screen stamina is important. If you're going to have a very long virtual event, build in breaks, build in downtime, bio breaks, time for people to eat, drink, do different things, and be mindful of what else the timing of your event may schedule or conflict with other schedules. So keep that in mind when you're kind of determining your audience. And we're going to talk now a little bit about the platform. There's lots of different ways to execute virtual events, and we'll go into some details in some of them. It looks like in our poll, we have some people using Cisco, the vast majority using Zoom, some using Microsoft or some other platforms, or some Some of you, it says you have nothing you currently use. So that's interesting. That is about what I would guess. Zoom has become very popular with nonprofits. So considering your platform and how your audiences can interact with that is important. And it's very common, really, for a lot of different technologies to come together to execute your final event. Your final event may not all just occur in Zoom or all occur in Microsoft Teams or all occur on YouTube. It may be, a blend of different technologies and platforms, and that's very common. In all of our examples, we're going to dive into exactly how they were executed, so you'll get an idea of that. And be careful of kind of your platform and your audience having too much to manage, sort of a management overload. If people have to register here, but then watch something here, but then the Q&A is done over here, and you have a lot of different things happening, that can be a lot for people to manage. So keep that in mind when you're planning. Some other important details about the platforms that are available, and we're going to be talking about in a lot more detail later, is, like I said, access technical requirements. Another major thing is security. And kind of in the early days of people starting to transition to do more things online, we saw a lot of issues with security, random people joining these Zoom meetings or webinars or different events, and problems with that. So keep in mind security and how you're going to lock down your event, how you're going to make people register, and consider whatever platform and how you're going to organize this. What else does it have to tie into? Do you have e-commerce, donations, other integrations? It would be a tragedy to have a really great successful event and have all these people register and have no way to pull that data out, and then email them. So consider all those things you may want to do when you look at platforms and your audience. One thing that you'll hear me talk about, and it's going to come up throughout this, we talk about how we have executed events, is this tool called OBS, which many of you have probably not heard of. It's not super common in the nonprofit world, but OBS is a very, very powerful tool that we use a lot to help execute virtual events. And it's a free open source piece of software that you can get. And it actually powers a lot of other solutions. There's a lot of sort of large virtual event systems you can buy where people are kind of producing live events with different cameras and hardware and control things. And a lot of times this free software is actually underneath the hood powering it all. And it's similar to Vimeo, which is a video streaming service kind of like YouTube. Vimeo has a very strong virtual event kind of system. It's expensive though, you have to pay for it. And this OBS tool is very similar to the tool that they sell. And it runs on Mac and PC, and you can use it to stream content to many places, to Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, other places. So I just thought I would mention this because you're going to hear me say OBS later, and if you're wondering what that is, it's a tool we use as our primary kind of streaming system to stream content, video content. Another really important thing for your kind of event considerations is post-event. Definitely plan and think about your post-event. What are follow-up actions for attendees to do? Do you want to take your content that maybe had happened live? Do you want to make it on demand, have an on-demand version? And do you want to kind of capitalize on some of the content and the connections that may have happened during your event? Like I mentioned, getting attendee data and working with that data, that's very important. Many times virtual events can really bolster your connections in your community. So with attendee follow-up, sometimes attendees won't, for instance, say you're having a virtual gala streamed on YouTube. Some important attendees may miss it. They miss the first part, or they may have to leave early. So for instance, keeping auctions open longer, keeping the donation windows open longer, you're going to potentially have some delayed actions from attendees. So plan on that. Some attendees will need more time to make their donation, and they may not do it right during the event. Another great thing is to plan to reuse content. If you generate content for your virtual event, whether it's live or pre-recorded, planning on reusing it in other communications or for other things. That just gives you a lot more return on your value, a lot more bang for your buck. So keep that in mind. Do keep in mind, though, if you're going to use content for your event, say you have speakers or someone doing content, you will need to probably get some kind of release from them, video release or content release for them to sign if you do plan on using their keynote speech or using their talk later, in something else. So keep that in mind. If you generate great content, you don't want someone calling you a year later saying, hey, I didn't give you permission to use that. And especially post-event, virtual events can really strengthen your existing relationships, like I talked about, with your network, with your beneficiaries, or with your donors, or with your sponsors. So a virtual event can really be great. If, say, you have sponsors who usually sponsor your annual gala and they're kind of bummed now, maybe it's not going to happen. If you do a really good job on the virtual version, we've seen that really strengthen those relationships with donors and sponsors and all kinds of groups. So it's a good thing to plan these events out really well to help those relationships. And then I've also seen a lot of people will get a lot of new people joining and becoming aware of what they're doing through virtual events because, of course, it's easier to attend a virtual event than a physical one. You don't have to go anywhere. So you could widen your community, widen your audience, and that may be the first impression people have of your organization is this virtual event. So all that planning and audience consideration is really important. Let's see. So we'll talk somewhat now too about promotion, which is kind of usually in that planning stage. You definitely want to promote your event really well. Promotion is very critical. Especially now, a lot of things are becoming virtual online. You're competing for someone's time. And a lot of times people are kind of scrambling because maybe they delayed an event hoping COVID would pass. It's still here and now things have been delayed, but now they have to do something on a shorter notice. There's kind of this crunch time. So planning on your promotion from the very beginning is important. And utilizing all your various channels you have, if it's social, your website, email lists, all of that. Here's an example of some really great promotion. I feel like Emma Norton, and this is an example we're going to go into more later, they did a really good job. So their annual gala is called Opening Doors. What Emma Norton does is provide housing. So doors is kind of along with that theme. So they have a logo for this specific event. You see that their Opening Doors gala. They've created this logo and a whole look for the event, and they used it on their website, in their social, email channels. Then when the event was happening, it was streamed on YouTube. All that branding carried through. Even in the script, they start out, welcome here, welcome to our event where we're going to help and open more doors for, homeless. So the opening doors, even that language was kind of throughout. And it was very good branding. I feel like they did a really good job. So promotion is really good for reinforcing your brand, especially if it's the first virtual event you've done and you're trying to kind of broaden your audience and your community. The branding design is really should be throughout the whole program on the content. You can build a really strong message for your event and, of course, for your cause through that branding and communication as well. And make sure you have a plan and you have consistency sort of across all the channels, right? Across what you put on your website, what you send out in emails or email lists, your social, if you're even doing print or something else. And then leverage also another important promotional thing is cross-promote with your participants. If you have secured a really great MC or a host or an auctioneer, or if you have going to have a musical guest or something, or have people sort of contributing or participating that maybe have their own network and their own group of people, work with them to use their networks as well, just to kind of help, expand your promotion.